Right now, the information.
It keeps you tuned up too.
So
When
we
you
have to
do
do
that,
that,
then
we
tune
try to
you
staff
up.
that work, and then I have to.
That's the problem. I never did have time to.
That's, got to be hard projects. Yeah.
Well, Jack Nicholas and I met in Moscow. I'll tell you that story.
It's only day and it. He's glad that he's. Up top.
The question would be,
Local law. Signing.
or, yeah, what, like, are there going to be an opportunity for them to have this? I'm not really.
You would see
Have a lot
the
of questions,
executive.
but
I take the kids over there, but he was Nicholas was there. And he was having statues. Yeah, so he and I were sort of, it was me first, or my kids, and then his kids. So we would sort of be waiting. And then the lady said, hey, I'd like to big lump, so we take photographs, so we said, okay, he and I went to lunch. That guy's funnier than, that guy's the funniest guy. We were just talking and laughing, and going, this guy had me belly button, I'm telling you.
these are all, these are just. So if we get one like this, so this is related but separate. Then you feel this can go forward on that date and then.
I'm gonna introduce you. I'm gonna do an introduction.
August.
Right, that's fine. That way you can speak on, don't you?
Uh-huh, so they'll probably go forward. Okay, not sure policy stuff.
So I wonder if we can do that here, where it says open or. Open discussion, right there.
Maybe.
That's where I wanna introduce you. I wanna make a point.
Well,
That's
you want
right.
Yeah.
What's that?
That basically.
I don't care either way. Well, I wanna make a point.
All this. Parts. Try to get it.
Awesome, Jared. Okay.
So, I was thinking about our discussion, especially on the trail part. Cost.
Oh, thanks.
Bike ride. Show you what's happening. Project. Your wife? You got a pedal, man. Come on, it's good for you. It's getting harder and harder.
Right, what I'm trying to do is come together for that additional.
I get the excitement.
Maybe we don't need to-
I'm never gonna do these fantastic.
Yes.
Different kind of-
I never worked, the work never stopped.
Not now, I forget that.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Smaller rides, whatnot, relatively.
All.
Yeah, it's just, it never gets easier and I push
That is
myself
like a chapter,
more.
that chapter is.
That's right.
All that, so.
Yeah.
Look forward to it. Thanks for helping us figure out that.
Yeah. Okay, we will get started. We've got some people on Zoom here. So I will just start with you on Zoom. If you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand at any point. We'll
Zero.
recognize you. Sorry. Letting everyone on Zoom know that they can raise their hand at any time if they have questions or comments. But generally, I think our approach today was this is gonna kind of be a third now of 4 at least of these meetings. So we are adding another meeting, which has not yet been set, because we're gonna have some more park info for you all at that meeting. So we will set that meeting as soon as we have all the information you need. We will give you enough time to digest that information or we have a meeting. So today, really, I think we envision more as an open house where you can ask us questions. We don't have any new information for you today. We have the presentation, which is just reiterating from the last meeting again. So if you want us to pull any of this stuff up in the presentation, we can, but otherwise, I think we're just here to take questions, take feedback. If you've had more time to look through some of the stuff, if you have more comments, whatever you guys want, this is the floor for your meeting today, so.
Oh, boy, I get to talk today, huh?
Rich talks, I just want to add one little thing in response to Vince, your very valid comment about how do you know when we change the website? There is a widget now on the div web page and you can sign up to be notified anytime anything changes. So I just want to let everyone know. We're trying to keep up, you're trying to keep up. We were able to get that in place, because we're during the meeting almost got that moving, and so that's been.
I saw that. So you enter your email and your name and it will shoot you a message. I assume. I don't think I've
We
gotten
didn't
one.
change anything since the last meeting. but
Fair
back,
enough.
so,
So nothing is updated.
A few business days ago.
Got it. Okay. Fair enough. And yes, I did sign up.
Figured you did.
Good, I'll sign up. All right. Well, could I say a little something?
Yeah, you are recognized.
I'm recognized, huh? All right. A couple of things. One, when the bank sends us a statement, we sort of trust what the bank said, and we take the attitude that we're wrong and we adjust to it. When the city says something, I sort of feel the same way, that they're supported with their statements. Last week at our last meeting, it was clearly said that the good news is that due to the fact the state has said that we're going to go on a square foot fee basis, that the fees are going to be lower for what I call the workforce housing. We call it whatever word you want to call it. So obviously we asked the question, what do you support that with, when there was no answer? And that's not good. When a statement's made, and we trust the city. So I asked Vince here, and we discussed it, and he stayed up all night and did some work, and I'll let him address what it is. Are you awake?
I'm awake.
All right, but I got one other thing to say
Listening to my
too.
good ear.
I got one other thing that I've been asking for, and that is a meeting with Laura. The reason that I want to meet with Laura is I have questions regarding the fees. And she's the only one that has them. I've asked Ken here to set me up a meeting with Laura, and he says, no, can't do it. Got to wait until Brian gets back, which is going to be 2 weeks. So that's like having a meeting after the war's over. I'd like to have it ahead of time because I have a lot of questions, and I don't want to bring them up here because it seems like I would be too controversial. But I need to get that meeting, and I need to get these answers, because we're off several $1 million from what I'm looking at. So, and she's the only one that I've been told has the key to the door. So.
And for those who aren't familiar with who Laura is or what this issue is, can you just briefly summarize what
Yeah, the conversation I had with Rich had to do with the annual DF reports, for the bills and accounts, but basically the accounting of the different DF amounts, flag data, how much is in those different funds, that what projects that goes to different. So, Rich, I briefly went over the understanding report. There's some follow-up questions that related to California Drive, some of the other projects as far as, because it is a snapshot in time over like the beginning of time, how much has been collected, how much has been set aside for certain projects, and why they not been built. So that's where I mentioned that is beyond that was stated in the report. That would be a follow of the public works for program, or suggested it makes sense that Brian, the director of public works, being that meeting, but that I would set the meeting for someone on the staff.
Well, and it'd be nice, I'd like Brian to be into it, but he has some personal issues. And we're moving forward. We're going to be in council on the 27th, and we're moving. And I want to keep it moving, so I think we have to have the meeting without it. If we want to have anybody else in that meeting, that's fine. I don't care who's in that meeting. But I need to have
Let's
answers.
clarify
It's
something.
sorry, I did not interrupt you. All I was gonna say that was on the 27th, May 27th, all we are doing at that point is taking a proposed schedule to council of the next 5 months, basically. So nothing, on May 27th, there will be no substantive discussion within it all. And I only say that to let you know, we do not plan to take any action moving forward in that manner until you've got the answers that you want, to have meetings that you want to have. So that meeting on the 27th is just a schedule setting meeting essentially, so that council knows what's coming for them and when we're taking those items, but nothing substantive on this, how much the district.
Is that the one that we get to talk more than 2 minutes at?
This is the council meeting where we're presenting the schedule for this project.
You're
We'll have
representing,
the opportunity to speak about the schedule, but the topic is not about the diff, what it consists of, what the fee, what the costs are, what we're doing. It's
yeah, but I'm concerned about the schedule as
Yeah,
well.
you're able to speak on the schedule,
All right,
yes.
all right.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like there is a follow-up, that you've raised questions, we were working on the answers, and I think that when Brian is coming back to the office, he has a scheduled return date, so, that meeting will get set, when it's scheduled.
When's he gonna return?
Who's back next week?
Next week?
Yes.
So
No, that's fine, that's fine. I can live with that.
So I have, what I've heard is your questions are relating to how much money has been set aside for California Drive, how much money is set aside for California Drive, right? Those were. those
That's
specifics.
part of them, but yes.
So what's online, and I know what we've talked about before that, that's not how we do it. That's not how this operates. We take that money and put it aside for specific projects. I think we've talked about that, discussed that. We can discuss it further if you want, but I think that answer's been given, so wanted to discuss that.
Well, maybe I'm too dumb to understand it, but the answer that I heard, I can't believe is correct, but I want to make certain that it is what it is. So, yeah, I still want that meeting. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to him and all the work that he's done, because this to me is extremely important as far as what these fees are actually doing and what they are doing to workforce housing. And that will stop workforce housing. Go ahead.
So this was, I started to look at what I was asking about last time and kind of on a square foot by square foot basis, how does the new fee relate to the old fee? And we said, we know the report says kind of this 2,500 square foot standard home, it's going up, significantly, 40 some odd $1,000, looking at the latest version of the report, give or take. And so I started going back and using all the unit costs per square foot costs and everything, current fee versus old fee, and just started looking at a range of square footages and starting all the way down at 900 square feet and up to 4,000 every 100 square feet kind of thing, which is what I was getting at last meeting. And so, and then I even went one step further and looked at a particular project that we're working on now. So just to give an idea, on what I would kind of consider, and I don't know if there's a rule for workforce housing or missing middle on lot size or square footage size, but I'll just pull 1,500 square feet, give or take, it's going to be a $25,000 increase in the fee moving forward under the current report. And I say that fully understanding Parks is still going to go back and look at their section. So I'm using the last number. That is including the Parks. That includes everything. And I know they said they're going to go back and look at their project list and everything else, but as it stands today with the current April 23rd or 25th version that's on the website, that's the way it stands. And yes, that included police, fire, general facilities, parks, green belt, open space, traffic, drainage, water, sewer, so it was all in. Now, it only looked at those impact fees. I know there's other county and school district and service fees and everything else, but just what the report focuses on, the impacts. And it just depends, the old fee structure, everything between 1,000 and 1999 is presumably the same fee. And so it's pretty advantageous for a builder to build a 1,950 square footer the way it stands. So something like that at a 900 square foot level would be a, almost a $36,000 increase in fees. And so a lot of the homes that I would say, I would presume would be starter home, missing middle, that sort of range. You're looking at $25,000 to $36,000 in increase, which I find to be pretty significant.
Yeah,
So,
let me say one thing.
yeah,
Yeah, you're talking a good number. The one that I get a kick out of is what I call the doghouse. A 900 square foot house, which is really tough to build.
I don't
There's
know.
a $17,000 increase in fees. Increase over what we have today. And that's on a 900 square foot house. So there is no reduction. And that's the point that I want to make. These fees, and to me, excuse me, to me, and sort of the illustration that I use is that there's two goals. This goalpost down here is what I call workforce housing, middle, and this goal down here is $1 million homes. And when we look at these fees, or when I look at the game, the developer is trying to get the fees down to where we can build these smaller homes. That's the goal. The city is forcing us to build these $1 million homes so we can absorb these fees. So the real world that I'm looking at, and I'm going to look at it from the council, I'm looking at it from staff, there's reasons out there. And I know that you guys, are smart enough and you're talking, in what we used to call the smoky back room. But the point is that you're asking for smaller homes and you're going to lose money. So the thing to do is to pump the balloon up here so that when we build the smaller homes, you get the same amount of money plus. And a 900 square foot home gives you the same amount of money plus $17,000. So you're continuing to make your dollars. But it's what you're doing in reality. You're forcing the developer who's running around on the ball field, throw the ball towards the $1 million. Because if we increase it to 10,000 square foot lots, and build $1 million homes, then we can afford your fees. And this conversation becomes virtually mute. But right now, the developer is fighting to get these small homes. And what the work that he's done has proven to me that it's important. And if we all approve what Lewis is doing and what we're doing, we're going to have a project out there we can't build. It's all going to be cut up to these nice small lots to where we can do small homes and the good intention, but the fees are going to stop us from building the homes. So we're going to have hay fields out there, which might be all right, but if we really need workforce housing, then we got to figure out what the goal is that the city truly wants to do. Do you want us to do $1 million homes or do you want us to do these workforce housing? And someone's got to step up and try and figure out how to make these fees work for either one. And to be honest with us. And if you want to minimize conversation, say, hey, Rich, take yours and turn them into 10,000 square foot lots, build $1 million homes. I'm picking up and walking out of here in about 2 seconds.
What I would say, and I'm happy to deliver to council input as well. This is why we're having this meeting. We want feedback like that. We want you guys on your end to run the numbers the way that they make sense to you, right? And then tell us what you think. That's why it's intended to be a dialogue. That's helpful information. And the other thing that I would offer is what we are going to be doing is taking kind of 2 pieces of this discussion in council, right? One piece is saying, here's the numbers that came out of the study, and that represents essentially the maximum possible fee. And then you start talking about what we have problems with, if you charge out the maximum possible, you run into issues like what you're talking about here, right? So then the other piece of what council will be looking at and talking about and deciding on is, once we know what the maximum is, how do we take policy steps to bring the workforce housing needs down, right? So that you can build smaller homes that make sense to build smaller homes. So there's the maximum possible fee, and then there's all the discussion that will be had about how do we realistically make this work regionalized, because you're right, if we're saying if you want middle, we're saying you want affordable at certain levels, then we need to make sure.
That realistically, not to interrupt you, but realistically, we've got to listen to what my passionate buddy says, because everything he said was the truth. And that is over 30% of these fees are on something that's never going to be built, but every time we mention them, they get brushed aside. Don't want to talk about it. Those are 30% on something that isn't going to be built. And there are fees that have been charged for since 1992, that's 30 years. And because I ask how much money is in the pot and I get the answer zero, and I ask where the money went, say it's a slush fund, everybody gets mad at me or gets mad at Tom because he gets a little more passionate than I do. And I get a little passionate, but the point is, if we're really trying to do something, then we got to look at what we're doing with the money and where the money truly is. Because when I look at 30 years worth of money and I wonder where in the hell it is, and I'm still being charged the same amount of fee, then I'm saying I'm not gaining ground.
I don't think that we should debate this issue again. I mean, this would be the second meeting.
No, I don't want to debate it, and I'm sorry I brought it back up again.
I think we're trying to use this meeting as a chance to hear issues of concern.
Well, it's my
We just
concern.
met on the 15th, and Vince, actually, you all raised a concern about, hey, if you guys run the numbers on how the maximum fee would impact various house sizes, and he said, no, we haven't, and of course, the parks fee is still unsettled, but we will. Vince, it's amazing you earned the midnight oil, we're able to run some numbers, because again, it's underscoring how important that exercise is. But I'm hoping we can use our time together today to air new issues, in the case of your issue with wanting to meet with Public Works, make sure that we all are on the same page about what has been raised, and hopefully spend time getting out any other issues or concerns on the table. We're not doing this to ignore you, Richard, we need meeting notes, we're having a follow-up meeting, we're scheduling subsequent discussions like this one, where we're gonna present new information, but it can be the date perspective of the whole meeting, we're gonna end up not getting other issues on the table.
So during discussions about proposed fee increases, staff has indicated that there's concerns with higher costs due to COVID, supply chain issues, runaway inflation. Respectfully, we strongly disagree. The problem is a project issue. Staff is continuing to include fees in the TIF for projects that we know will never be built. Let's talk about those ad nauseam. Those 4 projects, which are Lagoon Valley, California Drive to Lagoon Valley, Back Valley Parkway Extension, widening of Midway Road, and the additional 2 lanes of Leisure Town Road, which Carroll Way is being built to satisfy. Those fees total right at $150 million, or around 30% of the TIF. The last citywide traffic study that I'm aware of, and I confirmed this earlier today, was done in 2014 as part of the 2015 general plan update. In the last 11 years, think of all the societal changes that have occurred. COVID changed the way we work. I have 20% of my staff don't even live in California and commute remotely. Think about how shopping has changed with Amazon and other online services. Those changes have dramatically changed traffic patterns throughout the community. For example, I live about a half a mile from the Alamo Drive Merchant Street intersection. I go through that area 4 to 5, maybe more times a day. And it has been years since I've had to wait through 1 traffic cycle, which 2 traffic cycles indicates a problem. I won't get into level of service. Yet this TIF still, since 1992, includes millions of dollars for the California Drive extension to fix a problem that does not exist. When I learned that the city was embarking on an update for the fees, I asked several folks within City Hall, including the city manager, if I would be able to sit down with staff during the discussion about what projects would be included in the TIF or not, and I was rebuffed. In the last meeting, staff indicated that the fee update would result more, and we've already talked about this, as Vince has pointed out. Even for the smaller homes, there's a significant increase in the fees. I and most of the development community would simply request the city take a step back. Conduct a citywide traffic study. We haven't had one in 11 years. Evaluate the projects that are really needed. Then with the updated information, we would request the city conduct a cost benefit analysis of the proposed improvements. For example, a several $1 million intersection improvement may only result in the savings of a few seconds through an intersection. Several $1 million to save a few seconds of travel time is obviously not warranted. We believe that the analysis would result in fair fees. I am a huge advocate of impact fees as a resident of this community. I don't want development overrunning the community. But on the other hand, I think what's being proposed is so unfair. Respectfully, the maximum hire, I call that shock and awe. Shock the development community with ridiculously high numbers, and then we'll swallow hard and accept it when it's only too high rather than ridiculously high. So I'd rather get to just what is the number that we as a community want to see, not shock and awe and not anything unfair, but what is required. California tried. I've been arguing that since before some of you were born, probably. I've been arguing against that project. It's so ridiculous. It's almost laughable. I'm done.
Thank you. And I think, again, part of the discussion with council is what they will be looking to you for your input on, and what we would like to get you enough time to make sure you have consent on is what's coming off of anything of those lists. So that's going to be a piece of part of the discussion. So we need to look at it, bring it up, and appreciate that information. We appreciate your request for what you'd like to see. It's not falling on deaf ears. I think there will be opportunity to discuss them.
I interrupted Vince, so I didn't mean to do that. Were you done or?
Well, no, I was just going to say that kind of one other step I did take, and this was rushed right before leaving out the door, you know. So I ran a table through by square footages to see how these relate, but then I kind of wanted to see, you know, what does it mean in the real world with a real project we have building today? And so I took Village 5, which, if you don't know, is a motor court, I call it, or T-court style homes. They're pretty small unit, 3,600 or 4,000 square foot. They're not big 10,000 square foot lots, and they're not 3,000 square foot homes. So rough speak, they're 1,580 to 2,120 square foot homes. And on average, the fee increase ends up being about $32,000 a lot on what's a pretty darn small lot, pretty modest sized home build or average-ish home build style deal. And maybe I sometimes feel like the fees can escape people because, you know, everything the developer builds is passed on, including fees, to the homeowner. And so this is $32,000 on a small lot, small home that's passed on to somebody borrowing money and paying interest for 30 years is what happens. Or if the fees and things go too high, the developer doesn't build the project and they walk away. We just don't have the housing. As Rich has kind of said. So, you know, they'll either find a product that works, pass those costs along, or they won't build. But that being said, that seems like a lot of money on a very modest sized lot, modest sized home project at $32,000 a piece on average. So I did want to highlight that. I fully understand you may.
That's the increase.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. That's the increase, not the new total, nearly $32,000 increase on those. You know, which is significant. I lost my train of thought on the other point I was going to make about that, but.
Whatever you do to find that, and we have a question on Zoom from Chris Robles. If you want to unmute, Chris, and give your comments or ask a question.
Yeah, thank you. My comments kind of follow up with the comments from Tom. I've heard at the last couple of meetings that staff's goal is to identify the maximum possible fee. And I think the wrong question is being asked. It's the purpose of the development impact fees is to build the important public infrastructure for the community. And I would challenge the question is, what is the best way to most efficiently and expeditiously build that public infrastructure that your community expects? And I think if you move forward with the fee adjustment at the level you're talking about, it's going to stagnate growth. You're not going to get the revenues that you expect, and you're not going to build the infrastructure, and your community is going to be looking at you going, why don't we have the roads, the parks, the things that were promised to us? So I think really the approach is, how is it best to actually get this infrastructure built in the most expedient and efficient way possible? Tom outlaid a very practical, pragmatic approach on how to look at traffic and adjust that. And I think every piece of infrastructure that the city is looking to build needs to be evaluated in the same manner on its cost benefit, some efficiency engineering on costs, and come up with some reasonable expectations so that you can move forward with an appropriate fee adjustment that gets this infrastructure built in a timely fashion. I think that the community deserves that. Thank you.
Chris?
So can I ask you a question? Chris mentions the maximum possible fee, which is discussed, which is what all my numbers are based upon. Does staff just simply present that number to council, or do they come with some other actual recommendation besides the maximum number when it comes time to, when this is an action item to adopt the ordinance?
And I think from talking to Brian, my understanding at this point where we are is that the number comes to council as a fact, right? This is what the study says is the maximum you need to support everything that's covered in the study, right? So there's lots of room within there, but that there's not necessarily a recommendation from staff. I think at least not at the preliminary discussion level with council to allow for these discussions without any kind of, balance one or the other at the end. So if they just come with this is the max ceiling, right? We can't go any higher than this because it's not supported by the Nexus Study. Then all this room down here is where we're having discussion. And so I will defer if anyone knows differently, but I think Brian's approach last time we spoke was there's not necessarily going to be a recommendation if we said that first meeting, so that there's time for that discussion to happen.
I just wanted to add, though, I think the reason why we're having these meetings is we're trying to make sure that whatever our Nexus Study says is the maximum number is based on accurate facts, projects, and accounting. We're hearing a lot of very strong input from developers that, you have some concerns about the projects we're including, the cost of those projects, et cetera. That is part of our deliberative, sometimes painful, but nonetheless collaborative process with you all. Is we're not going to go to council and say, this is the number. We haven't looked at it. This is what the consultant says. This is it, people. We're actually trying to work through the project list with you all, your concerns about the project, the costs that we've been doing the follow up to the first and second meeting, additional research on costs, not just for parks projects, for other projects. So, but the idea is at the end of this, we will present to the council, this is the maximum number that the Nexus Study can justify based on a set of projects and a set of costs. And there then is then that's like they either say yes, okay, or no, we disagree, and then there's a whole public meeting with opportunity for input. At some point, we do go back to council and say, okay, we've settled this topic of the maximum possible, justifiable under the law. Council, what do you want to do as a policy decision? And if anybody off the street could say, well, I would just think we should do discounts, but part of what the council has to work through is if we need this much to build the things the community needs, wants, and deserves, and we talk about what we need, want, and deserve, if we need this much, if we're collecting less, we're not going to get the things. So that's part of why both parts of this project are so important, getting that maximum number correct, or at least really being clear on what the areas of disagreement are, and we do the research, and then developing those policy options so the council can give like that direction, and then going back to them with an actual implementing instrument that then sets forth, okay, here's what we're doing, here's how it's being phased in, here's all the timing. So that's why this is a multi-month summer fall project. That's why May 27th is literally just introducing them that here's the schedule that's coming your way.
Aaron, I got a question on that. We're talking about the maximum. I'm talking about, does the city need that money? I mean, if it's a need, I want to hear that. Or is it maximum allowable by law, so we're gonna just try and get this kind of money. If it's a need, then we gotta go to this goalpost.
Right.
If it's just a want. And, see, I don't understand that maximum because the city should be working towards one of these goals. And I'm trying to hear if it's a need, if it's truly a need and for you guys to exist and to have these pretty roses and things that we have out here. We need to know that, then we're going over here. Then what's the battle with the council, you know, I mean, you know,
So, here's what I would also offer. I think getting the inputs right when we're getting to that maximum number is, I think, what Eric's talking about, making sure that when we're doing the back end work of how did we get to that maximum number, that we're accounting for things like, okay, should we take some things out of the needs list altogether, or should we downgrade them from needs to wants and then change the way we think about them, getting the inputs right to get to that number. But then even at that number, there's potential for them to set it differently, right? And then even once they set it, from there, there's an additional layer of, you will have opportunities for requesting deferrals, waivers, depending on the housing type, right? Council might say it is really important to us to have X amount of affordable housing, what that is defined as, and then they might tell us to implement a program where if someone comes in with that project, they get some kind of reduction in their fee, they get some kind of waiver, they get some kind of deferral. That all happens too. So even when there is a set fee, which may be, but likely will not be the maximum, right? That's kind of a esoteric topic. It's way over here. You probably will end up with something here, right? And then even once that fee is set, there's this extra piece that you go through of, am I entitled to a deferral, a waiver, project specific things, right? So when we're looking at an affordable project that the city wants, we have opportunity to meet halfway on that.
yeah,
So there will be
but see, to me. If I had that kind of discussion in one of my construction trailers, I'd probably fire somebody. Because the point is staff, in my opinion, this is my opinion, should be working to establish a fee that works for the city, that works for each one of your departments, and that hopefully goes for one of these goals. I mean, if you really need the money, then do it. But if you don't, then call your own and do it now. Why do we have to go to council and say, hey, here's the maximum that we can get. Now you call it. They're not the ones that are down there cutting the ditches and doing the improvements and putting the stoplights in and building the parks. If you need the money and you need 100% of what you're talking about, then that's what you tell us. Hey, we gotta have that money or you don't get services. That'll put us somewhere. But instead I don't hear you working for what you really need and trying to get it fine tuned. Is what I hear you doing is getting it up here and letting the council lower it down.
So I guess what I would respectfully offer in response to that is, it's more about, we do identify the number that we need, right? We set the fee there. The way that we get there is an iterative process where everyone's involved and then council sets the fee, which is theoretically supposed to represent 100% of what the city needs from developers. When I'm talking about opportunities for deferrals or waivers or things like that, that's because council will have told us, we want to prioritize certain kinds of projects so much that we're willing to essentially figure out how to make up that gap. So if you're going to end up with, here's the fee, but we're only going to charge you affordable housing project 80% of the dip because we've decided we like affordable housing projects that much. Then the discussion at that point is, where is that other 3% coming from? Not that we don't need that other 3%, but that we need to find an alternative thing to provide in that's not the dip. So that's what, when we're talking about deferrals or waivers, it's not different projects getting treated differently all the time. It's, we have identified that number, and then sometimes a project will come along that is entitled to a conversation with the city where we figure out how to help get to where we need to go. So, yes.
So the 4 projects I continue to talk about went from $100 and some million down to now $31 million. Because somebody ran some kind of analysis and said, well, we don't really need that. So now, why did that first set of numbers Why was that thrown out as a need? And now it's down here as a need. There's begins to be a credibility issue here. And that's what we're struggling with. So then that's why it's so important. The city is relying on 11-year-old data for traffic that is wildly off. I have background in traffic. I understand traffic. I've lived here this entire 45 years. I understand where the traffic issues are. We don't have the same traffic issues today that we did 10 years ago. Yet we're relying on a traffic report for the needs of improvements throughout this community. There's nobody on this planet that can tell me that we need to widen Midway Road to 4 lanes between I-505 and 80. That's just not possible as a need for this community. Again, we should charge developers what we truly need, but to throw out $50 million for Midway Road, holy crap, most of that is county land that we're never going to be impacting. And part of the problem with the general plan from 2014, 15 is the fact that we had an election in 2014 that dramatically changed everything that started in 2011. The city council in 2011 did a preferred land use alternative. It did traffic analysis and EIR work and all those things based on development, primarily east of Leisure Town Road. And that was all thrown out because of a mayor race between Len Augustine and Ron Roulette. And when that happened, Len Augustine decided he was going to be a no-growth advocate. He got a whole bunch of people politically in town to agree with him. When I said in the last time that I spoke that the general plan was a bunch of garbage, it is because it was all of the work for 4 or 5 years was thrown out and it was changed in just a few months because of that mayor race. And so things like getting infrastructure up to the northeast sector, thrown out. A lot of stuff got just whacked. And traffic was analyzed with that general plan being done, and then it was whacked. So we're relying on something that's not valid for stuff that we need, that we don't need. And like I said, COVID changed things. The Amazon, online stuff. When's the last time you went to the store to buy something? I almost never go unless it's groceries. And everything has changed. So when we talk about need, we need to go back and figure out what we really do need. We cannot rely on old information, and that general plan respectfully needs to be updated because it's not worth the paper it's printed on. There are so many conflicts, so many things that are wrong with it because it got changed after 4 or 5 years in a very short window, and it's not good. It really isn't. And I've had to work with it, and it's not good. So we need to get, if we're going to have needs, we need to have good, reliable information. And this, I just have to say one more thing. These discussions have severely impacted the city of Vacaville in attracting new development, just in these last couple of months. There is a tremendous fear in the home builders. I've heard of it. I've heard from them. They've called me. What the heck, and that's not the word they use, is going on in Vacaville? We're talking about a 200% or 100%, who knows what the number is. They heard 363%, some of these builders. It's caused huge damage in the development community. Just the numbers that have been thrown out. Please take a step back, get the right information. Tell us what the city needs, not upset maximum, not the shock and awe. That just drives me nuts. I've dealt with that for years. Tell us what we need. Then we'll work to get it done. That's my last statement.
Just a reminder, if you're online, if you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand. Comments.
I'll ask her one more thing if nobody's going.
You're
No,
good now.
one more quick thing. if you're going to have a study session with the council, have it in here. And publicize it, do whatever you need to do. But if we're gonna have a real dialogue with the council, we need to have a dialogue. The study sessions, the way they've been handled is staff gets an hour, we get 3 minutes. It's ridiculous. There's no real give and take. So if you want to have a study session here, let us have an open dialogue. You can publicize it or conduct it differently and only have that be the only item on the agenda. But if you're gonna try and squeeze all these things into a big meeting, and it's totally worthless. I won't go anymore. First of all, I don't like coming here anyway, but I won't go anymore with those kind of studies because they're totally worthless. And honestly, it's a joke. So that's my request.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you can hear me. It's really hard to hear. I can only hear about half the conversation. I put some notes in the comments. I couldn't hear Ken at all. I really struggled with Miss Annie. I guess what I need to know is I feel like if there are discrepancies with the city of Vacaville's relationship with developers, I'd like to know what cities have implemented some of these fees, these new fees based upon square footage, and what is working in other communities. I don't think we need to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but I'd be interested to know in comparing what you're proposing we do with some of the places that the developers feel have a more fair process or more development friendly as to the different types of housing that we've identified as wanting to build in Vacaville. So I certainly have heard everybody's comments today. I recognize that it seems like there's some latitude with staff's recommendation, but that would require council's discretion on a lot of issues. I think that what I would like to see, and this I speak for myself, is just I'd like to see realistic expectations at the forefront so that if people are looking to develop a project, certainly a project that we want, that they know from the very get-go, what kind of incentives we may be able to do or fees they can expect so that they can plan it. So that's I'm happy to continue the conversation. This is a difficult platform to do it. The time is absolutely horrible for me to meet. I work. I'm not retired, and so I don't have a ton of time. But this is certainly an important issue. I want to know where this is working and why it's working where it is, and identify maybe some of those things that we may be able to implement here or tweak so that it works for Vacaville. And so what I will try to do is touch base with all of you, maybe individually offline. I will also say, there are some comments about only having 3 minutes on some of these issues. If I would be in support of having some sort of special session that's 100% dedicated to this so that we could have a more in-depth dialogue on some of these complicated issues to iron them out. I think it's imperative that we iron these things out quickly because they're ongoing and continuing. This is my 5th year on council. Feels like the frustrations have only complicated as we've moved forward. I'm not interested in having an adversarial relationship with anybody that wants to invest or develop in Vacaville, but I do want to incentivize us building the type of housing that we're looking to shape our future. So hopefully that helps. I don't know if that gives anybody anything, but if anybody has questions, feel free to reach out to me on offline.
Thank you, Councilmember Stockton. We've taken notes. We will take all that into consideration.
Councilmember, I do want to clarify, we've held these meetings during the business day because we've been inviting developers specifically. If there is an interest to have meetings with the broader community about what projects report to them, that wasn't really part of our scope, and that is why these meetings are being held during the business day.
No, I'm
Which
not
is sorry, I
talking
know it's not
about.
convenient. You have a full-time job, but the developers,
Yeah.
their full-time job is during sort of business hours.
I guess what frustrates me is I mean, and again, I'm not trying to. I'm not more important than anybody else on there, but I am a crucial part of this decision-making process. I'm off on Fridays. I can dedicate a Friday because I'm off. But the last two times this meeting was scheduled, it was scheduled earlier in the week, which makes it challenging for me. And I do think it deserves some time. And so maybe we can do a special session either on a Friday or over the weekend. If money is an issue, then, you know, I'd be happy to bring it up to council to pay overtime for staff or whatever it is that we need to do.
Thank you very much.
Obviously, you all know this is not your only opportunity. Always reach out after.
Anything else you want?
So recapping our next steps, that's the important thing. And Annie, part of our meeting was that we are doing more work and follow up with the comments we've gotten. We're working on the parks fees, working on other topics. We're continuing to develop FAQ responses to your questions in the form of FAQs on the web page. So if you subscribe to the diff page, every time we update it, you will get notified, and that way you won't have to go to check it kind of randomly to see what's happening. We are going to announce a fourth meeting like this one, once we have materials up on the web page. And as we said, we're going to give you a minimum 2 weeks to review those new materials. So when you come to me, you've had a chance to look at them. And then ultimately, we will also be coming up with a full schedule, which will be presented to council at their May 27th meeting. So that will give you some insight as far as when we're trying to get some. And both websites, they're really, really long. I don't recommend typing in if I can. And there's links to both websites on the meeting agenda we passed out. And if you're not in the meeting and you can't find the diff page or the process improvements page, please email one of us and we'll send you the direct links.
Okay. Well, we can stick around for a bit longer, but I think if no one else has any questions, then that will conclude the formal part of the meeting today.
This is good. This is good.